Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out. We appreciate you joining us for the panel. We're going to be talking about how AI will be reshaping the role in the film and TV industry. And Nikola and I are co-founders of a company called Wonder Dynamics. And Angjoo and Antonio were so kind to join us on this panel. They traveled from Boston, and Angjoo's a professor at Berkeley. So they made the trip out here, and we're so glad to have them here on the panel. They sit on our advisory board. I will let everybody just do a quick round of introductions. We can start with Antonio, and he'll tell you a little bit more about who we are.
Okay, well, I'm Antonio Torralba. I'm a professor at MIT, working at the intersection between computer vision, human perception, and machine learning. And I've been working on this field for a long time, and started dreaming about doing research on this area since I was a little kid. So I'm really happy, that some of those dreams became real.
Super. Hi, I'm Angjoo Kanazawa. I'm an assistant professor at UC Berkeley. I do research in the intersection of computer vision, computer graphics, and machine learning. My research builds on the premise that the world is 3D and dynamic. And my research is about perceiving the dynamic 3D world from images and video, which is very relevant to this project. And so I'm really excited to see it in action.
Thanks, Angjoo. I'm Tye Sheridan. I do not come from the field of AI and computer vision. I actually come from the field of film. So mostly as an actor. I got started as an actor very young, and just been following curiosity along the way. I met Nikola working on a film, and we both had a passion for filmmaking and new technologies and how they might help us to tell better stories, and that's really what gave us the courage to go and start the mission, start this company.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Nikola Todorovic. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wonder Dynamics. As Tye mentioned, I come from visual effects. I started kind of learning visual effects when I was 12 years old because I wanted to be in film and tell sci-fi stories, but visual effects was something you can do online and learn, watch tutorials. So I spent many years working in the industry, in the film industry, and then Tye and I started Wonder Dynamics 2016 because we wanted to kind of, every time we wrote movies, we wrote bigger films than the budgets we could make with a lot of CGI. So when we discovered these technologies early on, about 2018, 2019, we really saw it as the future of cinema, and we wanted to learn how to do it so we can tell and make our movies that we couldn't traditionally. And as we were building the tools, we realized, okay, this is bigger than us and our films. And then we decided completely to focus on building the software, which we're going to share a little bit more about today.
Yeah, and I guess that was 4 years ago when we first started stumbling into AI and some of the research in fields of robotics and autonomy for self-driving vehicles, and we realized it was all about scene understanding and image perception, which film is just 24 frames per second, 24 images per second. And we realized quickly that AI would be a big part of the film industry in the future. And I think we, as film lovers and cinephiles and aspiring young filmmakers, we really wanted to be a part of that. And so we for the past 3.5 years, we've been building a platform that we just launched last week called Wonder Studio. And thank you. And I guess we could show you a quick demo that just came out last week. We'll show you a product demo so you have a better understanding. It's very visual. So I guess we can go ahead and play that now, and we'll talk a bit about it afterwards.
They say all great stories start with a sense of wonder. And what if bringing those stories to life wasn't limited by our resources, but only by our imagination? Welcome to Wonder Studio, where making movies with CGI is as simple as selecting your actor and assigning a character. The system uses AI to track the actor's performance across cuts and automatically animates, lights, and composes the CG character directly into the scene. Whether it's one shot or a full sequence, Wonder Studio analyzes and captures everything from body motion, lighting, compositing, camera motion, and it even tracks the actor's facial performance. All the artist needs is a camera. Filmmaking is a medium of creativity and collaboration between artists. There's no AI that can replace that. Wonder Studio was built to empower those artists while still keeping the existing 3D process in mind. Alongside the rendered results, Wonder Studio gives you the ability to export the individual layers you need to deliver your final visual effects shot. Whether it's lighting, camera, or animation, you can maintain full control and make detailed adjustments in 3D space. From the paintbrush, to the typewriter, to the camera, tools have always been an extension of the artist, a means to help our voices be heard. With Wonder Studio, we hope the world hears yours.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So to add to that a little bit, what inspired us to make this? The whole process in CG and visual effects is since the 90s, it's been changing, but not that drastically, and it's extremely, extremely expensive and time-consuming. And that's why we haven't seen a lot of indie movies with heavy CGI, because usually indie films stay away from it. Even green screen or rotoscoping, you really can't fit it in a budget. Some films will really spend a year or two in post-production. That's why we have big studio films that are costing 200 million up. So for us, we always wanted to make something to really allow people, voices all around the world to tell stories that are a bit more grounded, but visually more interesting. Because we do think young people tend to watch, something that's more visually exciting. And sometimes indie films, unfortunately, seem too slow for a younger audience.
Especially in a post-COVID world. I think the things that are getting people out to theaters, to cinemas today are spectacle, and I think spectacle really is only limited for a very limited few filmmakers. And so I guess, both of us loving those movies growing up and wanting to make them ourselves one day, we just really, there wasn't a way to do it. It's hard to get that opportunity. And I think that's an aspiration that a lot of people like us share. And so as you can see from the demo, this was, we're both artists, so it's a tool, it's made by artists, for artists. And I think that that's something we're very proud of, and that's at the very core.
Yeah, and I think
country.
that thing that we mentioned in the demo is really important, is the control. I think we've seen a lot of stable diffusion. We've seen a lot of generative AI. We wouldn't put this in a generative AI category because we're not generating art here. We're taking image, right? So it's still up to an artist, cinematographer, to shoot. There's still movie magic behind it, which is extremely important for us. You need to know how to shoot it. If you shoot it with an iPhone in a poorly lit room, it will pick up that information and your result will look bad. So if your CG character, which is still created by an artist, 3D artist, needs to look good, and it's going to render better if you shoot it better. So this is something that's really, really important for us. We want to accelerate the pipeline and then give you that editability in 3D space. I think when we first started early on, we saw a lot of issues with kind of black boxes of, first was deepfakes, and then we went, into nerfs and then stable diffusion. And I think what we realized is, the process of filmmaking is so collaborative, and it just, there's so many little details, especially in visual effects. You have a lot of vendors, you have thousands of artists, and then director will want to change a little bit of a camera. They'll want to change a little bit of the light. So it's impossible to have that just generated in 2D space. I think we'll get there in 2D space, but I think right now, the way we make movies, we have to stay in 3D space, and then we have to plug it out into the existing workflow. So for us, we've been building this in stealth mode for 3.5 years. Super excited to be out with it. But as we were finishing it, we started one of our advisors, Joe Russo, who's been absolute tremendous support. We've been working on a movie called Electric State, directed by Russo brothers. And we really realized we onboarded a lot of artists that had nothing to do with our software to then jump and use it. And we really realized they really need these traditional elements. They need the camera, they need the animation files, they need the lighting info so they can tweak every single element to it. So it really does not disrupt their workflow that much. I think the black box is a dangerous thing sometimes to plug it in. And eventually it will get there. But for us, it was really, really important that you have that editability.
Yeah, and beyond editability, there's accessibility with Wonder Studio. Wonder Studio, anybody can access it through the web browser, and then it runs in the cloud. So that was really important to us because we wanted to stay true to our mission and empowering artists and enabling anybody who has a story that they want to tell to achieve these effects, at least to a certain level. And that was really, really important for us to focus on.
That's one of the reasons, when we first started, there was a really, really good mentor of mine. I'm a huge believer in surrounding yourself with a lot of mentors. And this mentor of mine, Bob Schwab, told me once, if you go in any new industry, really surround yourself, try to find the smartest people you can and ask the right questions. And obviously, from a filmmaking side, people like Spielberg and Joe Russo, but then we cold emailed both Angjoo and Antonio because Angjoo has been leading a space in movements and capturing human movements. And some of this academia, they've been doing this for decades, and we just applied it to film and started building on top of that. And obviously Angjoo and then Antonio as well. So we've been super fortunate to have their support. The team really enjoys working with them. And I think sometimes academia, especially now with research, doesn't get the credit they deserve. Because I think everything we're seeing now in AI coming out is coming out from academia. One research paper or another that's been 5 or 10 years in the making. So maybe you guys can share a little bit more about how do you perceive your research that translates in different industries, especially in film.
Yeah, so most of our work is really trying to set up the foundations of the field. So it's really about building the knowledge that enables people like you to build tools. And I think that there is a very strong connections between our fields, between how we build, how we explore this area and different areas of application like the film industry. I think that in particular computer vision and computer graphics have been always very closely related with the film industry. And in fact, it's something that is not just from the moment that film industry started. The connection between arts and understanding intelligence and building vision systems started even before computers started. Right. From the first theories about perspective vision and so on, and how people are able to paint things that look very realistic, understanding what is that you need to put onto a canvas so that it looks like a mirror or something that is shiny, and understanding all these principles. I mean, the first people studying perception and building computer vision before computers were artists. And I think that with the film industry happens the same thing. And many of the tools that exist nowadays, a lot of the research that happens in computer vision and computer graphics is really motivated from the film industry.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, we always say that we're more of a story company than we are a technology company, but the film industry has always relied on technology since the advent of a camera. And I think notoriously, Hollywood has been a bit standoffish to new technology. I think as a population, as a whole, as a society, I think sometimes we can be a bit apprehensive to when it comes to new technology. But especially in the film industry, it's always pushed us forward since cameras and CG in the 90s and digital cameras that liberated indie filmmakers. So we really, we're only using technology as it is a means to help us tell better stories and bigger stories. And I think that it's, how do you guys feel about how we adopt certain AI technologies in the world, even beyond the film industry? But how do we go about some of the apprehension that people have, and where do you guys see us in the space currently?
Yeah, I think that of course AI is impacting so many different industries besides the film industry, and like any new technology, it creates uncertainties on how it's going to be deployed and the type of changes that it will create in a particular field. And I think that the thing to understand also is that AI is just a tool. It doesn't do anything by its own.
Right.
It needs people behind it. It needs the purposes given by people. And at the end, what happens is that all these tools, the only thing they do is they create new mechanisms to create new content or to solve certain problems or problems that before couldn't be solved, and now you can address them. But at the end, like in the particular case of applied to the arts, film industry, but any other area within the arts is that being an artist is always about bringing sophistication to the tools that you use. And when cameras started, or the paintbrush, like I can paint really badly. Like if I paint a person riding a horse, you won't be able to tell what the horse is and what the person is. And new tools haven't made that easier for me. Like I'm still very bad at that. So I think that when you have an artistic sense, it makes you able to use these tools in ways that regular people like myself cannot use those tools and create content that is like appealing.
I think that's one of the reasons that we also we saw a huge thing with AI is that it's making something really complex simpler. I come from a background of compositing, and when I started going in 3D, you open these 3D softwares and they're very overwhelming at first, and then the learning curve is really hard. So there's a lot of artists that are directors or storytellers or writers, and they're one-person show, and then they try to learn. That's what I did. Tried to learn every single aspect from writing, pre-production, post-production. And then you realize, oh man, I really need to spend 5 years to be able to master, to do this, what I want. Because this tool is amazing, but it's a very, very career-driven tool, meaning it's even in visual effects, if you switch from one software to another, it's really hard. It gets very, very challenging. So I think that's the beauty of AI. You just simplify that tool, and then you can come quicker to that creative pieces. Because that's what really comes down to, like, for us at least. We want to get rid of those manual kind of labor steps that are very technical,
time-intensive.
Yeah, that don't have like creative input on it. And I think unfortunately with visual effects, the field has had an issue for many years. Since Life of Pi days. I don't know if you guys remember when Life of Pi won, that company went bankrupt, right? So the visual effects. I read recently a story how there was another movie that the company went bankrupt and they didn't get paid, all the VFX artists. So they went to a big publication to try to get that published, and basically the publication told them, it's not a news that the VFX company went under, right?
Yeah, and just so everyone is aware, I mean, I'm sure.
Say?
Before we move on to this VFX thing, I want to pick up on what Antonio was saying about how technology is always around and it's just getting better and better. Because one of the first films was made by Edward Muybridge, actually in Berkeley. I think they wanted to see if the horse, when it runs, does it actually have 4 legs above the floor or not? And people didn't know this, and now that you actually made film, you could tell that, the horse is actually flying in the middle.
Right.
And so this kind of technology, I think one of it is motion capture was also one of the earlier technology that was also used in film a lot. But it was one of those technologies that's like really hard to use, and you have to put a lot of markers on your face.
Yeah, sure.
And you have to put people in a studio. And in my work, it's really about allowing you to do that from everyday videos and images. And so we've been working on this for a while, actually. This is a very long studied topic in computer vision. But the first time we made it really fully automatic because of deep learning was 2016 was the conference. And in 2018, we released this tool called Human Mesh Recovery, which really does it very quickly from an image. And that's around the time we started talking to each other.
Right.
And that's really integral in all the kind of things that we saw. And hopefully it accelerates all of these process of not having to put people into motion capture studio.
That brings us back when we reached out to Angjoo. Some of your students, when we talked to them, they didn't, they knew they were building for human behavior, and maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, actually, until that time, we were having a lot of more perspective of we want to understand people so that we can understand what they're doing in videos and understand scene images. And we weren't necessarily thinking about, we did have the motivation in mind of always replacing mocap. I would use Lord of the Rings kind of images in my talks. But we weren't really sure that it's gonna get this immediate impact and picked up. And so when I first showed them like the demo where you could replace people and actors from video, we actually had a really good demo from a very long time ago. So I'm really excited that it's finally out.
I know. It's been challenging. We've been seeing these tools come out, and we're like holding back. We're like, all right, we didn't want to plug out with just one piece of it, right? So Angjoo has actually been showing our stuff to students for over a year now.
More than that.
Yeah,
I think it's like they're film people, which is great. The VFX people are really particular about the way it looks.
That's true.
Oh, sure.
It has to look really perfect.
Sometimes we're too perfectionist. and people asked us about our demo. They're like, "Oh, this is fake." And the beauty of it is we tweaked about 4 or 5 shots in that demo, and the tweaks were clean played sometimes because the hair would get out, so the segmentation would get it. So we tweak, or like lighting or the pose a little bit would be off. But these are like tweaks, that takes you a minute or maybe an hour. But that's the beauty of it, right? You want to enable people to fix, because AI will not get it perfect. There's no way we're going to replace that process. But yeah, that's definitely something that, Angjoo, how you been seeing, kind of human motion progress in the past 6 months with all the craziness?
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the progress that we're making recently. Really, the progress is rapid. But in this aspect of motion analysis, we have been building small tools that really add up, and there's been really a lot of new updates. Now we can identify people through a video for a very long time. Like if you want to analyze or replace people in videos or understand what they're doing, it's very important to first understand which person, is that the same person across the entire time? And then in normal videos that people consume, people are always occluded by other people. And this is a very challenging problem of tracking. And it's been long studied in computer vision. And we made a really big progress, because now we can actually track people much better in 3D. Because in 2D, people overlap. It's very difficult to identify who is who. But in 3D, you know that they're different places.
Right.
And so you can actually distinguish them really well. And so tracking is really good. And we recently released this tool that builds on this, that can actually reconstruct people in 3D and actually capture their spatial relationships. And this is actually really important in understanding how people interact with each other, because clearly we're sitting nearby each other, facing each other, and capturing that kind of subtle spatial motion is something you think is obvious, but it's really hard. And,
it's very hard. We've been working on, for us it was important to do that because we wanted to, because VFX is known for doing shot by shot, frame by frame. So for us, with the tool, just to connect to what I was saying earlier, we did have elements. We have over 25 ML models running in the background, plus rendering. So we're slowly onboarding people, because obviously the cloud cost. But for us, it was really important not to be one plugin or one tool. We wanted to provide that end-to-end solution for more amateur users. And then for professionals, they obviously are not going to be happy always with end-to-end solution they can pull out. But to add to what you're saying, Angjoo, we wanted to allow it for a sequence. So you can upload your entire sequence and mark your actor, and then we'll look for that actor throughout the cuts. So it can really save you so much time. Right. You can run a full scene and be like, all right, I have 10 shots. Let's say 8, I'm okay with 80% of it. 2 failed, all right, I'm going to go traditional with these 2, and I'm going to continue.
Yeah, versus going frame by frame by frame and shot by shot. We're now able to upload entire sequences, track actors throughout the sequence, and then retarget those performances to CG characters.
And the lighting obviously is a really, really big one. It's one of our most robust.
Yeah, we have a 25 plus ML models running in the background on our process, so it's very heavy computationally. But yeah, as we mentioned earlier, it's designed to emulate every aspect of the artist, from the gaffer who's doing the light, to the cinematographer, to the actor, his motion or her motion, their facial performance. That's why we say we're not really a generative AI tool, because we're really taking what the artist is applying, and we're allowing them to do their job in a more easier process, automatic process. And then I wanted to ask you guys, both of you guys, how do you feel about research where it is currently, where you started, and then seeing more real world use cases from your research, and where do you think we go in the future from there?
Yeah, I want to ask this question to Antonio, because Antonio is such a superstar and inspired a lot of my work in the beginning. Is a really, really inspiring figure. So.
Wait, maybe I could just say, Antonio, how many publications do you have out? Because this is when we first. I know he's too humble, but I think I'm gonna guess the number, but it's. over 70,000. If I got it
No,
right.
70,000?
17?
Or citations? Or,
Yes,
or
yes.
citations?
But the citations don't necessarily count. I think
Okay,
the
all right.
impact
For me,
that,
that's impact
that's
is huge.
It's
Obviously,
hard
but-
to evaluate.
Yeah,
That's-
obviously our team is super impressed by that. Sorry to interrupt.
But I will return the question to you at some point.
But I guess I'm really curious, like, are you surprised at the pace that where we are now? And do you think we're early or do you think we're actually late?
Yeah. So I think that we are both late and early. When I just started working on this field, nothing worked. Like it was just embarrassing to explain to my parents what I was doing because, seeing for us, it seems so easy that not being able to build a machine that can actually see like we do, it just seems like we are silly or what, no? So it was hard to explain to my parents why the problem was interesting and it was hard to do. But the field has been evolving really quickly and there are a number of things that now are really impressive. Like I don't think any of us thought really that the field will be where it is now in many of the questions. And then there are other questions, there are other areas of the field that are very important that we are still behind. For instance, some of the work that you do on 3D vision and so on, this is how the field of computer vision started, trying to interpret the world, the 3D world. And right now we are just mostly about focusing on 2D images. No? All these models that are out there are about 2D images, and understanding the 3D world is still challenging.
Yes,
and it's just, it's still something that we are kind of behind. No?
And
given the fact that we started there.
And what do you think we need to accomplish in the 3D world in terms of research before we can move to a world where it's strictly 2D to 2D?
Well, I think that Angjoo is the person working in this type of in this area and really making a lot of progress. So what do you think is missing?
I will push for 3D to 3D always instead of 2D to 2D because once you recover the underlying 3D state of the world, you can edit it. Like in the demo, you could see you don't really like that angle. Maybe that was the actual angle of the actor, but it's true in like animation, like Disney would just exaggerate the motion to tell a story. And so it doesn't necessarily, so you really want this ability to control the recovered elements. And if you don't have it in 3D, I think lighting and all of these things will be difficult. I mean, maybe, GANs and all these diffusion models will replace that. I still think, there is some role about having explicit understanding of the world.
I agree 100%. I think, Angjoo, you said it, we live in a 3D. One of the first time we spoke, you said we live in a 3D world, so we have to build it in 3D world. And we had this kind of questions inside of a company as well, like how much, when this craziness with Stable Diffusion started, we're like, how much the 2D can really keep up with it. But then we realized filmmaking is a medium in 3D, and it's really hard. Obviously, you have 2D animation, but for us, when it comes to CGI, especially with live action, you really have to stay with it. There's just too many shots you want to find also in post-production.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
impossible to figure that out.
Yeah, and a lot of the 2D to 2D approaches, and especially with generative AI, we're very limited in editability. I know we touched on that a bit, but I think for us, it's so important to stay in the 3D space, give artists the ability to keep making tweaks.
There's a question we have from
there's two interesting ones here, I see.
I'll read this one from Tadi Prim. How would you all describe y'all's ethical framework for implementing AI into creators' workflows? I think for us that was really important. Obviously, with people we got involved with the company, but for us as artists, as we mentioned, we're not generating art, but we're also not training on other people's art. I think it's a hot subject for a reason. For me personally, I don't think it's fair that we're taking these databases and then training on other people's art, and you can generate it based on that person's art. So you couldn't do that in music industry, really. You couldn't sample other people's work and then say this is mine. So I don't think it should be allowed. I understand why we're so excited how fast this is moving, so we want to kind of jump over that, but I don't think there's a way to generate that same thing with synthetic data. So we don't have to, okay, if we're delayed a little bit, that's okay, but don't use other people's work.
Yeah, and then there's another question. As an actor, I guess that's for me, how can we move forward in confidence knowing AI voices and more will not replace us? I think that one thing that we wanted to speak about today on the panel were this ethical framework, right? Fear versus opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, I think people can especially in Hollywood, I think they can be standoffish to new technology. I think as a whole society, we can tend to be a bit more defensive. And we talk a lot about job displacement. How many people are going to lose their jobs? It was the same conversation with the advent of the internet. I think there wasn't, even then probably, there wasn't enough emphasis on how many more jobs will be created. For instance, I've worked on a lot of these big movies, like some X-Men films and a movie called Ready Player One. And these films, I don't know the exact budget, but the 200 million plus, it's so much money to spend on a movie. And I think that, if we can make those films and we only have to spend 25 or 50, maybe we can make 6 more of those films. How many more jobs are going to be created from that? You're multiplying one movie to 6. You still need the collaboration of a film crew working together to make these films. And also for us, what excites us about our tools, and the whole reason we wanted to open this up to the world, was to give kids like us the ability to go and make the movies that we were dreaming of making when we were kids. We didn't have the 3D knowledge, we didn't have the resources, and we just didn't have the access. And so what's really exciting is this conversation about how many more voices are going to be heard around the world. It's really, Hollywood is a very difficult industry to break into, and I think that breaking those barriers is really, really exciting on a global level in terms of understanding each other and having more peace in the world and telling better stories. More voices, I think, means better stories, and so that's really what we're hoping to achieve with this. And again, we're not in the business of replacing actors. I would never do that. I am an actor. And so I think we're really so focused on taking an actor's performance and allowing them to drive those characters. Like, this film that I did in 2016 that Steven Spielberg directed, we shot 6 weeks in motion capture. It was one of the most liberating experiences ever. I felt like I was going back to my inner child, and like, it was because you had nothing to rely on but your complete imagination. And that was so fun, and it was fun to drive a CG character, someone that wasn't you. So I think that's okay. I'm not. Of course, like if we're taking actors, like I'm sure we've all seen the deep fakes of Tom Cruise, and I think these are the areas we need to be a little bit more concerned about, skeptical about, how we're taking other artists' work, training models. As Nikola said, we don't necessarily believe that that's very ethical, and so that's really, I think it's really important for us to be having these conversations, be talking about these things, talking about how we can open up the door to these conversations, not be so fearful of them. It's AI is here. We should be talking about it. We should be talking about how we're going to integrate it into society, into the infrastructure of our world. Maybe you guys can have some specific comments or thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there was a question that was actually a little bit related to this, which was about when will the first fully generated AI movie appear? And I think the question really should be rephrased in, will it be good?
Will it be good? Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah,
Did you see that Seinfeld episode that got generated on, I think it was...
Yes.
The ChatGPT script, and then he went crazy, and then they had to shut it down because Jerry Seinfeld wasn't acting like Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, essentially it all comes down to how good is the story, and especially with our tool, how good is the artist? How good are the artists collectively?
Well, I think that's the difference in question: AI generated versus created by tools that just speed up your production. This is the difference thing. I think AI generated, I don't know. Am I crazy about watching completely AI generated film? Not really. I don't think if you take that human out of it, for me, that's not that exciting.
You lose the soul.
Yeah, so I don't know. But that's me. A lot of people are okay with that. For us personally, as a company, we don't want to move in that direction. So for us, we're more excited about speeding up the process so the artist has more time. I think what's going to happen in Hollywood is just like traditionally what always happened. People always like, oh, this is going to replace Hollywood or something. No, it's really not. I think usually what Hollywood does, they just they'll usually have to control themselves. They'll be like, okay, I want to make these shots, but I can't because of the budget. So now instead of 200 hard VFX shots, I'm going to do 150 or 100, and I'm going to take these medium shots or easy shots. But I think now, just like with virtual production, we allowed a lot more hard VFX shots to be put in a production. I think, and then you can make bigger spectacles. So I think that's what exactly is going to happen. You know, the budgets will remain about the same. It's just we're going to see way more spectacle. And there is a need for content. VFX industry is way overworked. These artists working crazy hours. So I think there is a need for it, and it's, you know, it's been coming, and you know, I think the industry adapts really well.
I think it would be really cool if there are more creators using these VFX tools that are a lot easier, telling more compelling stories, and therefore maybe gaining a lot more, you know, space, a bigger voice in that area, so that, you know, that
I mean, that's what's exciting for us. We build it for, you know, people like that, people like ourselves. You know, for me personally, you know, I was born in Bosnia. I lived in Serbia. I moved here when I was 20. It took me many years to even, you know, break in Hollywood, get a job in visual effects, and then after that. So a lot of artists don't have a little bit of that, you know, fortune to find themselves. You have to be in a certain location. I think now it's changing, you know, with Netflix doing, you know, local but global. It's changing. There's been stories made all around the world that are really high level. So I think the demand for content is greater than ever. So for us, it's just, that's what excites us. This is, you know, I think if you have a company, a startup especially, you're gonna have a lot of sleepless nights. Like last night we didn't sleep because we had certain deadlines. So that's why my energy is so low. But I think for us, you have to have something that drives you that's a bit bigger and greater than yourself. You know, that's why we've been doing this for, you know, so long, is that we really do believe that we're gonna, you know, help with AI, not just our tool, but AI in general will help some kids somewhere in the world make some amazing thing.
Yeah. That's really relevant to the question asked by Damian about, you know, how be accessible to film in countries with less resources. That's really...
Yeah, I think, you know, since we're talking about the film and TV industry, I think that, you know, Hollywood does really pride themselves on inclusivity and telling global stories and really understanding people and shining a light on people that are underrepresented, and I think that AI can act as a huge bridge and filling that void and helping us understand more voices around the world, not just locally what people think are, you know, stories of misrepresentation or misunderstanding in Hollywood. You know, I think right now it really is very limited. You know, again, because it's so hard to break into this industry. You know, now if you have, you know, kids anywhere in the world with filmmaking, everyone has you know, most people have access to a camera, a digital camera. You know, that is a filmmaking tool. So in terms of accessing filmmaking, it's very accessible. They just, you know, people just don't really have the tools and resources to tell a lot, you know, high quality stories. And I think that's really where we hope to continue building our company and try to provide tools to those artists.
I think there's an interesting question here from Benoit. What about the opportunity for AI to fuel a new language for dynamic movies as an intermediate art form with gaming? It's quite relevant, actually. Are you not thinking about this?
Yeah, we have use cases outside of film for us. Obviously, like gaming, especially with AI motion capture. It's a big one, and we're working with some exciting companies on some applications, vlogging. You know, there's a lot of use cases that you can do for it. I think, as you mentioned, Antonio, CG really spans in so many different industries, and it's not just attached to. We've been seeing so many of these like incredible like YouTubers that come up with some short films, whether it's game cinematics or something that look amazing. Yeah. You would never guess a budget. You would never say it's one person sitting and using Unreal or something and building that story. So for us, that's exciting. Those are creators we want to support.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think getting our tools in the hands of students, young minds that are hungry to tell stories, you know, indie minds is really important for us. You know, we're, as Nikola said, you know, we're hoping to grant more and more access as we start to grow and continue with our web platform. But that's really
I got a question for Angjoo and Antonio. What do you guys see as like the biggest challenge right now in academia when it comes to this like, you know, the speed of research happening right now? Is there like a sacrifice? Is there a little bit of an arms race going on now? What are some of the challenges you're seeing?
Well, I think the arms race has always been there. It's always
now it's just mainstream. Now everybody's writing about it, right?
It hasn't changed. You're always thinking of a new idea, and you know, you are about to publish it, and then you realize that someone just solved that problem and published before you did. You know, I'm sure that maybe it hasn't happened to you so many times.
No, it has happened a couple of times. You had to change the name of our method because somebody wrote the paper with the same method.
That's right. That's right. So I think that now things are even moving faster because the field also has attracted a lot of people, a lot of talented people, and people are doing really spectacular things, and it's just even harder not to be creative and original. And
yeah, what do you think about the fact that how are you dealing with the compute issue?
Oh, like you.
Well, for me, actually, the 3D is a really nice aspect because we actually go and capture our own, and we've kind of moved on to, instead of big data, focus on learning from small amount of data and capture and then try to reconstruct. And so we can still kind of do things in the academic area.
Yes, that's right. So in fact, in my case, I'm moving into training with no data whatsoever.
Oh, very nice.
To be really, really
You're
cheap.
just trusting it. You're like, oh, they know.
Yes. So we are not like the big companies that have access, a lot of compute. We don't really have that amount of compute to do the research that we do. So we need to come up with creative ideas and ways of working.
Actually, this is why I think academia is better than industry. Well, like if you had to pick, or like I think I recommend people going through academia because constraints are good and it will make you creative instead of just running a big thing.
You have constraints in filmmaking, you know.
Yeah, it does.
You ever heard of a budget?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, I just had a question, but I don't know if you were going to follow up on that.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I just, it's a question, it's not here, but it's something I'm curious about, is that, one of the challenges with new technologies is that people are afraid because it alienates the people that don't know how to use it, and, you have actually used AI to build something really cool, and what I'm curious is how did you make that transition? How did you decide to go into this and
I think for us that was when we first started. Well, first of all, we have to give a shout out to our team. We have 55 plus, and a lot of our team members, when we first started, we were trying to find people with machine learning knowledge and computer graphics and visual effects knowledge. Really difficult. 2018, 2019, and we have some really talented people in our company that we've been so fortunate, and they really are the one doing the heavy lifting, with this. So I think the transition happened when we started building it, and then we realized, oh man, because we started building kind of selfishly for ourselves, right? Because I was like, I really am so frustrated how slow CG process is, right? So frustrated how difficult it is to have a mocap and to light and to shoot clean plates.
Yeah, it wasn't
and all of that. So
the idea wasn't to put it all together and to build this platform that would be in your web browser. I mean, that came.
Yeah, we built it locally first, then we used it, and then we decided, all right, let's go out full, and then we decided to build that kind of intuitive end-to-end solution. So as we were building it, we were really focused on let's keep it really simple for certain users, and then let's give access to professionals more. So one of the questions here is, kind of how do we provide these tools, one that is accessible to small studios, independent creators. Right now we're in closed beta. As we're letting people in, it's free. As we're going to go after open beta, we're going to have tiers. We're going to keep it free, and then we're going to have tier that go up, depending on the number of minutes of your footage that you export, or if you're going 4K, which is really important for us. We have to enable ProRes and 4K, because if you're going to go on professional level. But that's all because we're still speeding up our models, and it still takes. This is not an Instagram filter. This takes a lot of computational power. But we've been really fortunate working with NVIDIA and Amazon, AWS. They've been helping us. How to speed up the process in the cloud, how to get it optimized. So we're doing that right now, and really the goal is to have those tiers. So if you want to use it, quickly, and you're not going in the crazy 4K footage, you don't have to pay for it. But if you're going more serious, then you can go in those tiers.
Yeah. Building on Antonio's question, I'm really impressed because around the time when you started, I mean, things were starting to work and there was this sense of like, oh, maybe this will start to work really well, but especially when it comes to human mesh recovery, it wasn't really exact, precise yet. And I'm impressed that you picked it up, but also I'm curious, once you started working with these academic models and trained problems, like, did you see any open problems or any new challenges that we didn't really necessarily address?
So many. I think that's the hard part, because we, in our company, we encourage everybody to research, junior, doesn't matter, senior. We have a channel, research and brainstorm, everybody's just throwing stuff, and then you can just try it if you want to take a day to try something. I think it was really important. One of your colleagues actually told us this, and one called Sanya Fiedler. We spoke to her once. She's in NVIDIA, and she said it's really important that you stay laser focused, because there's so many things that you want to try, because there's so many like exciting problems that you want to solve. So again, back to our team, they really kind of saw it. This is a starting point. Let's build on top of it. So as we have foundation that we built early 2018, 2019, we kept building this optimization and adding different pieces. And some pieces are traditional CG, some pieces are traditional VFX, and then heavy on machine learning. So I think what I learned in the process from working, with engineers, machine learning engineers in our team, is how creative these people are. Because you sometimes think, okay, artists, visual effects, this is creative, and then you have engineers, they're coding. No, there's so much creativity on this side that goes, that I think when you're not, from that space completely, you don't understand. So I think that's really, it came down to creativity of, what can we build on top of it? And obviously, a lot of this, we built elements like lighting and face, and those, a lot of them built IP from scratch, because we had to, because there was no solutions on the market or anything that had kind of a base to start from. But Angjoo is always funny. Whenever we would show her something, we would have these monthly calls with her, with the team, and we'd show something, and Angjoo's like, that looks good. And a visual effects artist to me is like, that's not good, because meaning like visually I was like not happy hard. She's like, no, you don't understand, Nikola, this problem is really hard. This is good what you guys did to here. And I was like, it's not good. So I think I had to fight a lot on like trying to find that balance of like, all right, you can't wait for it to be perfect, because these are problems that people tried to solve for 20 years, right? Yeah. Like human motion, right? You can't, you just like, that's not a problem you're gonna ever solve to get it completely precise. So
I think that, again, that's why you need that editability. You need to give it back to the artist, because it's really hard to capture reality to a pristine precision. And but going back to our team, all hats off to them. I mean, they are incredible people, and they've inspired us in so many ways. Actually, all the stuff you saw in our product demo, that's mostly based on 2 shoots that we did, one in Texas and then one in Novi Sad, Serbia, where most of our engineering team is based. And
that's where I'm from originally. So
and we actually got the entire team out. It was almost like a
film school.
Yeah, film school. Like for 2 days, we did a 2-day shoot, and we had all of our ML engineers track.
We have a PhD people
like carrying lenses and holding the slate. And
Vuko, one of our guys who is a PhD, the guy's so smart, and he's holding a slate and standing in the frame. We're like, Vuko, get in frame. He was like slating. So it's super humble.
But there was a moment where we were getting ready to do that shoot, and the camera broke. We had an issue with our reformatting our codecs, and the camera guys who have been working with cameras for a decade or more, had no idea how to solve the issue. And a few of our engineers spent an hour working on it, and were able to come up with a solution. So they're just amazing. It's an amazing group of problem solvers. It's an amazing group of dreamers, and sometimes I think their vision is mostly what inspires the company and what we're building towards.
I don't know if they want us to have questions in the audience, right? Because I know
we've got some more on the screen, but maybe we've got 10 more minutes.
No, I mean, the audience here.
Yeah, no. Did anyone want to ask a question from the audience?
If there are any questions, or if they're doing that.
While we wait for that, maybe we can ask this one: How is AI also being used to push the boundaries of the art form outside just providing greater access to CGI and special effects? I'm curious what Antonio would think about this.
I'm not the artist.
You're very creative.
They are the artists. Yeah, no, I think this is really a question for you to answer. I think that it's a really important question. Every single tool that appears always make art to be different. Like photography made painting to change.
Yeah.
So how do you think this technology will change the film industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen it decade after decade, and we've been lucky enough to work with some of the filmmakers who have been on the top of the industry for the past 4 or 5 decades. And they've always used technology to stay on top. You know, I think every decade kind of brings us a gift to allow us to do something we hadn't been able to do before. So I think that will continually happen, and I think that AI will be a big part of that. You know, I mean, when you're shooting a film, you obviously have limitations. I mean, there are things that you cannot do with a camera. So kind of maybe circling back to some of the research you do and some of your interest, I think that the 3D space, understanding, you know, scene understanding and understanding the 3D space could allow us to do a lot more things in terms of how we move the camera and what kind of sets are possible to achieve for a certain budget.
Yeah, I think also it can be used for different things like post-vis or previs. So post-visualization or pre-visualization is when you make a movie before you get it completed to final visual effects, because it's really expensive, final visual effects. So this way, an editor and a director can find shots, right, and can lock in a cut before they go. This is something, you know, one of the reasons that Pixar was so successful is they did that approach, right? They would make a 2D version, kind of 2D or a rough 3D version. They would, you know, it's almost like beta testing. They would have a movie, completely movie. They would watch it. They would be like, all right, this is not working, this is not working, and they would, you know, release the movie. Marvel did that after that because, you know, they would do the same. They would do previs for everything because it's so technical if you're shooting these big Marvel films. You cannot just show up on set and I'm going to wing it. No, you have like, you know, 20 characters flying, literally flying in. You're on the green screen. You don't see much, so you have to know every single millimeter of your framing of your shot.
You know, inevitably there's always some big battle scene at the end of this.
Yeah. But I think the point of what I'm trying to make with AI is that now we can do that quicker. So we can actually experiment and find shots and actually make better films.
And put more money on the screen.
Yeah,
we'll
have more time. That's the thing. The time is a big issue in film.
So so in my lab, we also do motion capture, but we also focus on capturing the environment. And maybe you've heard of neural radiance fields, or NERFs. We just released an open source project called NERF Studio. And this will also allow you to just go around the room and then like take a shot from any view you want. And that would be like a perfect application.
Exactly. No, 100%. And I think also from a flip side of that is you have individual storytellers that want to pitch a movie. Right? Let's say they want to pitch a sci-fi movie. They can use AI, you know, to have that made cheaper, if it's 3-5 minutes, and then get to the studio execs quicker. Because it's really hard to pitch a project just on paper. I mean, that's what people are doing. But if you're first-time filmmakers and you go to a studio, you say like, oh, I have a sci-fi idea. It's going to cost $200 million. They're like, what have you done before? What did you direct? Nothing really. But if you can direct something like this, you know, put CG characters or environments, and you show up to them and you say, look, I just made this for nothing, and it's 3 minutes long, and you know, the execs are so busy. They got so many things they have to read. And if they can just watch it in 3 minutes, most likely they'll give you a call back. So I think, you know, AI being used as a concept tool and pitching tool and previs and post-vis will really speed up the whole process. I think it's really helpful the way.
We have who's teaching this new technology? Will it be a subscription, and what is the cost?
Who's teaching?
Who is teaching?
Angjoo, you're going to be teaching.
No, you guys made the tool.
No, I think we just, you know, we did just launch our platform, but I think.
Angjoo, we got 6 minutes. Can you do a tutorial for us, please?
No, we plan to do a lot of tutorial videos, but you know, again, we really want to put this in the hands of young artists, you know. So especially you know where we're based in Novi Sad, I think we have a lot of ambitions to do more programs for getting people involved with.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Just a good question. Two people asked, will actors who survive doing motion capture work have to find other jobs? No, you are not. You're still moving. You just don't have to wear a suit. So you're still being filmed. There's so much art.
In fact, they're going to get more jobs.
They're going to get more jobs because you don't.
Because
right now,
because
not everybody can
because
afford
motion capture is so expensive, and you may be only doing.
And there is like so much art to it. We were. Our demo was really skeleton crew. On the first, like some shots in Texas, there was three of us plus Tye and I. So it was really, really skeleton crew, and you could see per actor if it's a professional motion capture actor. Like the way they move, they really play the role. If it's be a robot, be an alien, they know how to move.
And we actually for our demo, we actually hired or casted an actor that had a lot of motion capture experience prior, and he was also a black belt and ballroom dancer, and he was a performance artist and really specialized in movement with his body. So I think a lot of the motion capture actors that I've worked with, they are very specific in this domain. I think that those jobs will only continue to increase.
I really strongly believe in this. There's a lot of tools where you can write text and then generate images. You can imagine them write a text and generate motion, but it really needs to come from human motion. That the subtlety and like the long tail nature is really challenging to just generate, and that's also where humans are really good at. And so I think
I think that's the thing with sorry, Tye, I think that's the thing with text to video.
Yeah.
Like yes, text to video is coming. It's not going to be perfect. It's great. You'll release stuff for social media. People, don't mind that much of irregularities if he has 5 fingers or 4. People don't care. But I think as far as like same with motion, when you're typing something, it's so hard to describe what exactly you want. I mean, that's why we work with other artists. That's why you're like sometimes spending a week communicating and then doing a version 2, version 10, version 20, because you're trying to find what is exactly that you envision, because you can't really communicate it in like 2 cents. There's no way. So I think there's, a human element there is really, really needed.
Yeah, and going back to what you touched on and how important that performance is, that motion, taking an actual performer's motion, and in a lot of ways it's so much easier than doing it manually. I think there's a lot of talk around some of these tools replacing manual artists, but it's also enabling performance artists to go and actually be driving these characters and creating more opportunities there. So I think it will continue to shift, and again, we talk about that job displacement versus creation of opportunity. I think that it's always going to find some way of balancing out because the artist is essential in the process.
And I think one thing Avatar is a good example, right? The reason why that movie is so good, obviously there's thousands of VFX artists, but performers there are incredible, right? And the producer of Avatar always says it's performance capture, not motion capture, because it's not just motion, you're capturing their performance, and we fall in love with those characters just because of those like subtle human movements in their eyes, their cheeks, and so I think that's really what you cannot replace. It's really hard.
I'm really curious because earlier you said when you were working on Ready Player One, that was actually really interesting because you didn't have anything to work with and everything had to come from your imagination. I feel like what this new technology allows you to do is to capture motion or performances outside, like with the actual environment.
Yeah.
Do you think that will actually change the way in which people tell stories or different?
Sure, I think it's also, motion capture is a lot of fun, the imagination part, but it's also those suits are so sweaty. And you've got those weird head cameras, and you're doing intimate scenes with someone, you get your camera hooked onto their camera, you're like, so I think it does take a lot of the awkwardness out of what...
We always talked about like the setups. So you have a shot you're doing, even if you're doing live action motion capture outside, right? You set up your shot or your scene, and then you want to move, do a company move, because a DP or director saw something, they're like, that looks beautiful, let's go shoot there. You can't just go do it. You have to wait for all the equipment that gets transferred.
Yeah, because essentially they have to calibrate this entire Vicon infrared performance capture system, which takes hours and hours and hours. So yeah, if the director is like, hey, I actually want to shoot in that adjacent room right there, it's impossible. So I think allowing crews to be more nimble, to have more flexibility in terms of shooting locations, I think is definitely an opportunity as well.
That being said, there's a reason the suits are still being used at the highest level, because the millimeter precision is still hard in AI mocap. It will get there. We're adding some really, really complex math and kind of logical understanding of human movement to our algorithms, but I think there's still, it's not just going to happen overnight.
Yeah. Well, guys, we got 30 more seconds. Does anyone any last comments or thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that one of the points is that artists will bring sophistication in how do you use these tools. I think that these tools, by making some things easy, they will also open the door to making other things harder.
That's right.
Which are the interesting things. And that's where the sophistication will come back.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. We really appreciate this. Thank you, South by Southwest, for having us. Thank you.